Welcome to GVN's Talking Comics Interview. On today's show, we welcome talented writer Conor McCreery. Conor is the creator of the popular Kill Shakespeare Comics Series. He is also the co-creator along with Neil Gibson of their new book Trickster, which has started its Zoop Campaign. Here's your host, Martin Sexton.
Welcome to another edition of GVN's Talking Comics. I am your host, Martin, and today we have the pleasure of talking to talented writer Conor McCreery. Conor is a prolific writer who has written for some of the biggest names in publishing, including DC, IDW, Boom, Titan, and Dark Horse. But today we're going to be talking about a new book that he and Neil Gibson have combined for, which is called Trickster, which actually opened up their Zoop campaign yesterday. And Trickster is basically a very whimsical, funny, and sometimes dark look at leprechauns, pukas, and many of the Irish folklore creatures. So we're going to be talking about his career, his new book, how that came about, his work with Zoop, and much more. So let's welcome Conor McCreery to GVN's Talking Comics Interview. How you doing today, Conor?
Oh, I'm really well, Martin. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our delayed chat.
Yes. Yeah, so we were actually scheduled for yesterday, but my man Conor talks a lot, right? So it's all good. So because so as I had mentioned, we're going to start with a little bit of your background for those of my followers who aren't familiar. You started out in journalism, I believe. So how in the world did you get from journalism to writing comics?
Oh man, happy accident, I guess. I mean, so yeah, before I was a journalist, I actually did spend a little bit of time. I'm from Toronto. I spent a little bit of time in film and television up here. And so I actually, myself and a friend, we created a kids' TV show that got optioned, but then, we actually had a couple scripts written and saw some animation, but it never got made ultimately. And same thing happened to a feature film script I wrote where I got some money with my co-writer. And the company that was like, we're going to make this our second feature film did survive their first one. And so from there, I was kind of like, well, I like writing, I like storytelling, but I need a job that's going to pay. And so I kind of moved into journalism, which was a bit of an accident. And then while I was working at Business News Network, and I got the chance to travel a little bit and work, I actually worked as a journalist in Africa, which was really, really cool. I was kind of still coming up with story ideas. And that's where this Kill Shakespeare idea came up. It was me and Anthony Delcall. And we'd worked on projects before. And yeah, that just kind of came together. And we just sort of thought, this is a really neat idea. And we've got to do it. We really want to do it. And I'd been working at that time. I'd actually been working part-time at the Silver Snail, which is kind of a legendary comic shop here in Toronto. And, I'd always been into comics, but I was kind of rediscovering my love. I kind of had stopped reading them at like 17, like, oh man, I got to leave childish things behind, and was now reading the Transmets and the whole Vertigo explosion. And was like, oh my gosh, these stories are amazing. And I gave them to my friend Anthony, and he was like, this is great. And we kind of were like, why couldn't Kill Shakespeare be a comic book? And that's really how it started. It was a why not question. And we found series artist Danny Belanger, and away we went.
You actually answered one of my questions before I got to answer, but that works out actually. Okay, now so you've written for a lot of the big name publishers, DC, IDW, Boom, and all of them. When you work for the different publishers, does the way you work change any, or does it depend on the artist you're working with, or how does that exactly work?
Maybe the answer should be it should, but no, I'm pretty consistent. I mean, my style of writing has changed a little bit in terms of like one of the things I really learned from Anthony. He's a real structure guy. I tended to be more of like a write on instinct, and I've found that having more structure lets me do more instinctual stuff. So I think I've become more of a structured writer, but it's not like, I haven't experienced a publisher saying, hey, we want you to write like this, or we need you to do it this way. It's always pretty similar in the sense of the bigger one I would say is with the artist. I've had a couple of scenarios where the artist and I have really worked very closely, and they get into the script and I go into the roughs, and it's really collaborative. And I've had some situations where it's been more like, okay, we'll send the pages, you'll see them when they're done. And, unless there's an absolute like big screw up, we're just going to keep it as is. And so that would be more of the difference, I think. But that's kind of a bit, I would say, more about licensed properties than stuff you're writing yourself.
I say, and actually, that was something I've only learned since I've been doing the interviews thing. Is I always assumed that the writer and the artist all work, kumbaya together. And sometimes, right, they don't even meet each other. They just
Yeah.
you turned in your script, and I'll draw what I'm going to draw, and hopefully you like it, and that's how that works. So that was kind of surprising to me. Okay, so you are teaming with Neil Gibson for Trickster, which actually just
Yes,
started at Zoop Campaign yesterday.
it did. That's right.
That's right. So tell us a little bit about Trickster, and because I mean, the little bit I've read of it, so it's a wonderful mix of humor and whimsy, and goes a little dark. But what made you decide to? What inspired you to do Trickster?
Well, so Neil Gibson is a really great creator out of the UK. Your audience may know him from Twisted Dark. And so Neil and I had met on the convention circuit. And we just you just meet somebody, you just connect with them, you just click. We had similar sense of humor. We're both mediocre writers. It was perfect. And so we were just kind of talking about ideas. And this Trickster idea, I love Celtic mythology. And Neil's actually also of Irish descent. So he was like, yeah, he liked that too. And we just started kind of getting talking around Irish mythology. And we kind of both came to this very weird space of leprechauns. And both of us were kind of randomly like, oh, it's so weird that leprechauns have been portrayed in culture as the little guys with the hats or the murder mystery, because they're, if you're being nerdy about it, which I tend to be, they're the children of the sun god. They're actually supposed to be tall and beautiful. And so we were kind of joking about like, well, why did we think they looked like this? And we were talking about the notion of like illusion and, about maybe you want to look that way. And that just kind of started the whole idea of like, well, why would a leprechaun be on Earth? Why would they have chosen, like, why would leprechauns choose to look a different way? Why did they have that power of illusion? And it just started to build into this really deep fantasy world. And we honestly, Neil and I worked on it for close to a decade, off and on. We would talk. We have a massive spreadsheet. We have like 4 of them actually, all these different ideas. And after so long, we sort of were like, well, are we going to do something with this or not? And so that's where we really honed in on this first adventure. So Trickster is about this guy, Rory. He is a leprechaun. He is a master of illusion. He does not look like what you think leprechauns look like, but it doesn't matter because of his powers of illusion, you'll never really know what Rory looks like anyways. But he is sort of a Robin Hood type figure. He tries to help out with like petty crimes in his neighborhood. But what he's actually doing is he's in hiding, which is something that nobody knows but him and a few people that are looking for him. And so Rory is in hiding on Earth. And this first adventure brings in some dark fairy creatures, some monsters of Celtic lore that have suddenly popped up. And Rory has to make this choice of, he has this kind of promise. I don't get involved with fairy world stuff, right? Like I've got my small group of friends, some of which are from the fairylands, but beyond that, I don't do that. But this one, he has to make a hard moral choice. And when he chooses to get involved, it's going to open the door to all the secrets he's been hiding, kind of both from himself and from some of his best friends. And so, Trickster at its core is a Monster of the Week book. It's kind of our superhero book. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of adventure. There's broad humor. There's bad jokes that we think are good. And yeah, it's meant to be a fun romp, but it is a little dark. There are a few parts that are push the envelope. So I like to think of it as something like Shaun of the Dead, or maybe an Army of Darkness, right, where there are those moments where you're like, "Ooh, that actually gave me the icks a little bit."
So how many? I know you're putting out the first issue through Zoop. Are there multiple issues to this story, or?
So yeah, so what we've done, so Neil and I, along with artist Veronica Saraceno and Nes Botza, who are the art team on the book. So we've got we've written actually outlines for many arcs, but we've written the first trade. That's completely written. And about 80% of the trade is drawn. And so we were planning on releasing it probably later this year was the original idea, but we started talking with Eric and Jordan at Zoop and got excited about what they're trying to do. And we thought, well, why don't we try zooping this first issue? Like, let's see, like, let's give our fans from Kill Shakespeare and Twisted Dark a chance to get some exclusives and to dip their toes into the story and see if they like it for, a few bucks before we kind of bring out the trade. And right. So yeah, that was for us, was hopefully a win-win. We get to test the story, we get some good feedback, our fans get something that nobody else will get. And, hey, if it doesn't end up being their cup of tea, well, they bought one issue as opposed to maybe buying a trade and then being like, oh, well, I love the guys, but this isn't my thing.
Right.
but it's going to be their thing.
And that's the one. That's one of the wonderful things about Zoop is right. You almost get to, as you said, you get to kind of test drive it and see if you like it. And as many books as I've bought since Zoop has started doing campaigns, I must like a bunch of them because I got a bunch of them. So anyway, so you mentioned artist Veronica Saraceno. I was not familiar with her when I first started looking into it, but I went to her website. She does, like I said, all of her work is so full of whimsy, and to me, it's almost perfect. So, how did that collaboration come about?
So Veronica was somebody that we've been kind of casting about for an artist for this project for a while, and we actually tested a bunch of people, and nobody was quite right. We actually one of the covers is by a guy by the name of Vince Nico, and we actually had great chemistry with him, but ultimately Vince was like, you know what, I don't think I'm a interiors guy. I'm a covers and pinup guy. And so we're like, okay, so what do we do now? And Veronica was someone that Neil had a little bit of encounters with because Neil's based in the UK, Veronica's out of Italy. I can't remember where he'd seen her work before, but we were both kind of struck by it. There was something, like you said, there's like a real fun and whimsy. And at first we sort of thought, I don't know, like, I know this book is supposed to be a horror comedy, but maybe she's too, like there's that, that European style. But the more you see it, she's just got such a magical style. She's such a talented artist. And working with Agnese Pozzo, the colorist, there are those colorists, like there are those line artists and those colorists who, when they come together, the work just pops in a whole new way. And they're one of those teams. It's each page the book gets better and better and better, and it's really exciting.
I said, I was really impressed. Okay, so now we talked about you're partnering with Zoop as your crowdfunding source, and as far as how did you decide to use Zoop? I mean, because there are other crowdfunding sources. What did you end up putting into it as far as research that made you decide to go with Zoop?
I mean, partially Zoop had reached out to us. So one of the two principals, Eric Moss, had worked at IDW when I was doing Kill Shakespeare. So we had a relationship, and he's someone I trust, and I think he trusts me to be able to tell a good story. I mean, and part of it was just, Zoop's ideas are, it's pretty interesting. It's, as Kickstarter has done very well with comics. There's like $17 million pledged this year. But what I thought was interesting about Zoop is, what they'd really like to create is sort of a curated crowdfunding source, so that, like when you do a Kickstarter for comics, it's not like Kickstarter says, hey, Martin, here's all the other comics we're doing. Right. And for good reason. But with Zoop, ultimately what they want to do is be like, oh, you're a comics lover. We're going to be doing a curated set of comics. There's going to be a bunch of projects, but not like as many as, say, Kickstarter. And so we really like the idea of, A, Zoop is going to do a lot of the back end work for you, which is a bear. And B, we really like the idea of being part of this comics community of people who there would be this kind of, hey, I backed this book, and so now I'm going to find out about your book. We just thought it would broaden the reach. Like I said, I know Eric and we thought, for one issue, like, let's try it. Let's see how this works. I mean, it's exciting to do something new.
Yes, of course. Okay, so if we our followers go to Zoop to check out Trickster, so what are they going to find?
So they're going to find very much like a very much like a Kickstarter landing page. You're going to get a video of me and Neil. We may not have been on our best behavior at the end of that video. You're going to see some interior pages. You're going to get a whole bunch of ideas of what the exclusives are. You're going to have a chance if you want to reach out to Neil and I and ask us questions. But yeah, basically you're going to find, what it's going to be. It's going to be a very fun, darker than you think, but still very fun Monster of the Week adventure. And yeah, knock on wood, what we really hope is that if people really respond to Trickster, and when we put out the trade later, that this could be a thing we do for a few years. Because like I said, we actually have a lot of ideas of where this whole story would go and what we would do with it. And yeah, for people who like Kill Shakespeare and like that epic feel, Trickster is going to bring that. It's going to be a very different tone in some ways. But it's going to bring a lot of that. So if you read Kill Shakespeare and you love Falstaff, there are a lot of Falstaffy type characters in Trickster. All
right, very good. Okay, so that's pretty much what I got for you. But before I let you go, I'm going to give you a chance. I don't know if I know you've been kind of probably laser focused on Trickster, but did you have any other projects that you had going that you wanted or could talk about? And where can fans go if they want to connect on social media with you?
For sure. Actually, I'm glad you asked that, Martin, because today is the release of another book of mine. So I've been doing a book called The Last Witch with Boom, which is a all ages fairy tale story about a young girl in medieval Ireland whose village is destroyed by a coven of witches. And she has this strange mark on her body, this witch mark, that is going to let her find those witches and hopefully keep them from ending the world. It's very much a tale. Trickster is very much a tale about the haves and have-nots in society, about fighting for the little guy. And The Last Witch is a little bit more about wanting to be special, becoming special, and then kind of having to not turn to the dark side. But that one's an all ages book. Trickster has a couple of darker moments. Like there's no language or anything in Trickster, but there are some darker, scarier moments. Where Last Witch, I like to say it's from 9 to 99. It is a great book to give to your 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old, but it's also a heck of a great book if you like a fairy tale to read on your own or use it as an excuse to read it to your kids. I read it to my 6 and 8-year-old, and we have a ton of fun. Of course, I wrote it, and they probably feel obliged to tell me they think it's great, but they do. My kids say it's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's with Boom, and that's out at comic shops today, which is the 8th of September, and then it'll be in bookshops on the 14th.
Excellent.
And sorry, social media wise, you can find me on Twitter. So I'm Conor McCreery on Twitter. You can find me Kill Shakespeare as well on Twitter, Kill Shakespeare and Conor McCreery on Facebook, and I'm the Real Conor on Instagram. If you generally want to see pictures of my kids, that's generally what goes on there because I'm lazy about putting art on my phone. But sometimes I put art on my phone and I sample what we're doing as well. But yeah, that's the major stuff I'm up to right now in the comic space.
All right, very good. Okay, one other question that comes to mind as far as Trickster goes, and you don't have to answer. Will we ever see exactly what he looks like? I mean, as you said, he keeps it, depending on who's looking at him, he looks different. Will they ever show? Will we see exactly?
So yeah,
what he looks like?
Actually, in the first book, we do show you his true form. So pretty early in the first book, you do get to see his true form. And as the book goes, we spend more time with him, which was kind of actually something we did intentionally, because part of our main character, Rory, part of his story is about kind of being willing to see himself. He has some interesting ideas about his past and about what his fault was in it. He's actually way too hard on himself. And so in a weird way, we wanted this book to start off with him often hiding in disguise for story reasons, but it is a bit of a metaphor for a character who that's his main struggle is he's going to have to be able to learn to look at himself and actually like what he sees. And the irony to me is that there actually isn't really anything bad for him to look at the mirror. He's just holding a lot of guilt from something he did in the past and from the people he hurt and from the lies he told, but he had his reasons.
All right. So well, it sounds great, like I said, and hope all our followers will check it out. They can go to www.zoop.gg/c/trickster to check that out. And I appreciate it, Conor, and we'll be paying close attention, of course, to Trickster and also your other work. And hopefully we get to talk to you again down the line.
Yeah, thanks so much, Martin. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening to GVN's Talking Comics. Please come back again. Talking Comics is a production of Geek Vibes Nation.